Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Miranda looked at this little, so helpless newborn girl lying in her crib, and her heart just tore into pieces. She was indignant. Why is everything so unfair in life? Someone is ready to give up everything just to have a baby, but the Lord does not give. And someone so easily gives up such a happiness. Poor little girl. What's in store for her now? A nursery with its gray walls, and no one to hold her in his arms, no one to caress her. And then an orphanage, cold, indifferent educators, and cruel children. Miranda has worked as a midwife in a maternity hospital all her life, and of course it was not the first time that a mother gave up her child. But for some reason she clung to this baby with her heart. She did not leave her side all her free time, and admired the chubby lips and potato nose. Her only thought wandered in her head, how to persuade her husband to adopt this girl. It was not an easy task, for the husband's character was very tough, like that of any successful businessman. And yet Miranda made up her mind. She dialed her husband on the phone. "Chuck, hi. Are you not too busy? Can you talk to me?" He answered irritably. "If something is very urgent, then tell me. But I'm busy. I'm preparing for a meeting of foreign partners. We want to open a branch there." The woman began to babble, agitated and confused. "Honey, listen, something happened here. A woman gave birth to a baby girl. She's healthy. She's so pretty. I've grown quite fond of her. I'm begging you. Let's adopt her. You know how much I want children." There was a frightening silence on the other end of the line. Then the man cleared his throat and answered sharply, "Are you out of your mind? What kind of crazy ideas are these? Why do we need someone else's child? Maybe her mother is an alcoholic or a drug addict. We'll be suffering from diseases for the rest of our lives. A lot of people know me in business circles. How do you think it would look? I'm against it, so let's stop talking about it." The woman burst into tears into the phone and screamed hysterically, "You heartless log. I never asked you to do anything. I put up with all your tricks and flings. I've wasted my life on you for nothing. I can't take it anymore." She hung up and ran to the washroom. She cried and cleaned herself up for a long time, and after her shift she sat by the baby in her room until late at night. She did not want to go home at all. For 15 years of marriage, she was fed up with her rigid and despotic husband. Everything must be just the way he wanted. Her opinion was never taken into consideration. Miranda held this defenseless baby in her arms and softly sang a lullaby to her. The baby sniffled sweetly and serenely. The nurse on duty, Betty, quietly entered the room and hissed at the woman. "What are you doing? Don't get her used to your hands. It'll be harder on her later on, because they won't be fiddling with her in the baby's home. And don't break your heart unnecessarily. Go home. It's late." Miranda suddenly cried softly again. "I can't. Betty, you know. I just love her. I asked my husband to adopt a little girl, and he said no. What am I supposed to do with the rest of my life just to please him? I'm a woman, and I want to be a mommy too. My soul is torn to shreds." A distraught Betty understood Miranda's feelings perfectly. Everyone knew about the tragedy that had happened in their family and began to comfort her. "My wretched one, come on, don't cry. Maybe Chuck will change his mind. And the little girl, of course, she's pretty. I'm sorry for her." Miranda could barely tear the baby away from her, covered her with a blanket, and wandered home, not noticing the wind, the cold, or the total darkness. Her soul was black and sad. Suddenly, her whole life seemed so unnecessary and worthless. What was the point of it without children? She quietly turned the key and a worried husband jumped out to meet her. "Miranda, why are you so late? I can't reach you. Everything is off. I didn't know what to think. And there's no dinner." To his surprise, his wife did not react at all, just looked at him reproachfully and disapprovingly, waved her hand and silently went to her room, closing the door tightly. This had never happened before. Chuck went into the kitchen, opened a bottle of whiskey, and drank some, his mind torn with doubt. This is all because of today's conversation. She's got it into her head to adopt a child. Although Miranda is understandable, it is not easy for her. Not long ago, our child died before he was born. She has not fully recovered yet, and I am to blame for that. So she wants to feel like a mom. Yes, and I am good. I hurt her often. Not a fool to take a walk. She's not like that anymore, for Christ's sake. Something's broken in her, and her eyes are all puffed up. Maybe she really should go for it. Then the wife will come to her senses, and life will get better little by little. What's the matter with me? I'm in my 5th decade, and we're still alone with her. Though who knows what this girl will grow up to be? Who knows how not to regret it later? Miranda lay in her room, aloofly looking at the ceiling and going over her entire destiny, trying to hold on to something so that she would want to enjoy life again. Miranda grew up in a poor family. My mother worked as a saleswoman, and my father drank heavily and took everything out of the house. Swearing and scandals were common in their family, as well as complete lack of money. The girl only saw chocolates on big holidays or on her birthday, not to mention toys or outfits. The disheveled doll and a rabbit with an ear torn off. That was all her toys. No one at school made friends with her. They considered her an outcast because she was quiet and taciturn, dressed the worst, never had a snack or money for lunches. Her mother, in order not to bother with her daughter's hair and not to spend money on expensive bows and pins, cut her hair herself into a short curry. Miranda hated her short hair and always dreamed of growing her hair long. Everyone teased her. Miranda's hair doesn't grow, and her tights are mended. Don't be friends with her. The girl could hardly wait until those hateful school years were over, and then she left for another city to go to medical school. The girl did well in her studies, and she was accepted right away at the interview. Finally, Miranda could admire her beautiful long brown hair and not hear her father's drunken scolding and mother's cursing to him. The girl set herself a goal. I will never live like them. No way. I'd rather live with a husband I didn't love, but I'd rather be well off. I don't want my children to be malnourished and never see a normal childhood. Miranda graduated from college with a brilliant degree as a paramedic midwife and was hired by the local hospital. At first, it was very difficult, both mentally and physically, but she tried her best and helped the little man to be born. In spite of everything, Miranda liked her job. The team was not bad either. Her colleagues were simple and easygoing. The girl rented a room in the suburbs, and one day she had to order a new door, as the old one was too old and did not close properly. After taking money from the landlady, she went to a construction hypermarket. The salesman was not there, but the owner himself, the stately and polished Charles, was sitting nearby. As it turned out, he immediately sketched out this young, unsophisticated pretty girl who timidly tried to explain what she wanted, confused by the names and models. The man was experienced, gallant, quickly helped Miranda to place the order, and they got to talking a little. As there were no visitors at all at that moment, Miranda Chuck liked him very much. She had never conversed with such important men before. Slowly, they began to see each other. The groom was for Miranda the image of a father rather than a husband. He taught her life, knew everything, and always solved any problem with a single click of his finger. She listened to him unconditionally. He was very interesting to her, and 6 months later the couple got married. It was not that there was a mad passion or unearthly love between them. It was just that each of them assessed the prospects ahead of time. Chuck was 10 years older than Miranda, and naturally he had had many women before her, but all of them were not suitable for the role of wife or mother, too glamorous and winded. But Miranda is quite another case. She is young, very attractive, of quiet, easygoing nature, and absolutely without bad habits. Isn't she the ideal wife for a businessman? Plus, she is also hardworking and lazy, especially since he had quite a temper, and not many women could stand him. Miranda, on the other hand, was absolutely delighted with Chuck. Grown up, rich, smart, has his own huge mansion, and is firmly on his feet. What more could one dream of? You won't be lost with him. You'll be like a stone wall, she reasoned. The only thing the girl did not consider was that her future husband had an absolutely obnoxious character. She thought she would get used to it. But in fact, it was not that easy. Miranda went through a lot during the 15 years of marriage. Chuck was very oppressive and uncompromising. Everything had to be just the way he liked and wanted. Not only that, but the man would periodically go out late into the night with some partners. He often smelled of women's perfume. Miranda cried and was nervous, jealous, and worried. In addition, her husband was a terrible pedant. Everything in the house should be perfectly arranged in its place. He did not tolerate a mess or the slightest disorder. The husband liked to eat tasty meals, and he preferred home cooking. Miranda tried to please him in everything, but sometimes her nerves gave out. Of course, Chuck was not always like that. There were periods of absolute idyll. He could luxuriate and give Miranda expensive earrings or take her to an overseas resort. He could suddenly hold her close to him, hug her so tightly that her bones cracked, and whisper, "How do you put up with me? You're worthless. I love you, my sunshine." In general, their life together was always like a volcano. But most quarrels in the family were caused by the fact that Miranda could not get pregnant. The businessman had a fixation. He needed an heir, a son. He dreamed that he would raise him in his own way, and he would follow in his footsteps, continuing his business. Chuck was angry, dragged Miranda to private clinics. Everyone told him in one voice that his wife was fine and healthy, and he still didn't believe it. How could that be? Whose fault is it then? If she can't get pregnant, there must be something wrong with her. Miranda just held her hands up and tried to explain to him that not everything depended on her either, and she was worried enough as it was. So why add to the already stressful situation? Finally, after 5 years of unsuccessful attempts, Miranda became pregnant. How happy she was! She could not believe her happiness. Pregnancy was hanging by a thread. She had abdominal pain. She felt nauseous and exhausted. She had terrible morning sickness. The woman was counting on her husband to take care of her and feel sorry for her, because he had been dreaming of having a baby, and without that work in the maternity ward was no sugar. But Chuck was not going to change. He was still going out and coming in drunk sometimes, demanding complicated meals for dinner and perfect cleanliness in the house. One day, a man came home quite drunk and saw his wife asleep, covered with a plaid, and no one had cooked anything in the kitchen. For some reason, he became so furious that he began to scold Miranda. "Darling, what's the matter? Where's my dinner? I asked for stuffed pike. And why doesn't the house smell like lavender? Didn't you mop the floors? You know I can't stand dirt." Miranda became so offended, and she responded sharply, "Chuck, I'm actually pregnant, and I feel really bad. My stomach hurts a lot. Can I at least get some rest after work? Or are the floors more important to you than your own baby?" But the tipsy man wasn't going to feel sorry for his wife. His bad temper kicked in, and he yelled even more. "Why are you talking to me like that? And in general, pregnancy is not an illness, as far as I know, but a normal state of a woman. There, Albina, my colleague, 8 months pregnant, and still driving and shaping. What about you? Otherwise you get so lazy, then you will not do anything at all." Knowing her husband's horrible temper and the fact that he was going to nag her half the night before she fell asleep, she struggled out of bed and wandered into the kitchen to stuff that pike, damn it, and scrub the floors. Even though she knew perfectly well that no one needed it, it was just nonsense. Just as she was cleaning up in the hallway, the irreparable happened. She was bleeding profusely. Miranda screamed in pain and fell on her side, curled upright on the wet floor. Chuck sobered up at once and began to call an ambulance, comforting his wife and cursing himself to death. But no matter how hard the doctors fought, it was all in vain. Miranda had miscarried. Chuck poured ashes over his head. "Idiot! Idiot! I, a drunken fool, had been given this pike along with the floors. And now what? Our baby is gone, and Miranda was asking for it, telling me she was sick. And me. After what happened, Miranda closed down and went into depression, as if she froze, became like a robot. It seemed that life continued as before. Her husband settled down and became a homebody. He was affectionate and gentle, but she did not care. Inside, as if ripped out with the roots of the soul, she felt empty. Well, why cannot she carry a child and give birth? Was she some kind of flawed person? And now, when she saw this newborn baby girl, for the first time since that tragedy, she wanted to live. And once again, Chuck stood in her way. It was like a vicious circle. The woman was up all night with these sad thoughts, and she never slept a wink. Early in the morning, there was a knock on Miranda's room, and Chuck opened the door. "Darling, get up. I made breakfast." Miranda jumped up. Husband made breakfast. That had never happened in their family before. It was Miranda's sacred duty. She went into the kitchen with interest. There were eggs and sausages on the table, and Chuck had even managed to make a funny face on them with ketchup. Then he said, cryptically, "Miranda, I've been thinking, in general, I agree. Let's take this girl, if it's so important to you. I don't mind. We are well-to-do people, we'll raise her, especially since our nursery is fully equipped and everything has long been bought." The woman squealed and jumped up to her husband, embracing him and covering him with kisses. "Lovely. Thank you. I assure you, this is such an adorable baby girl. You will definitely accept and love her. What shall we name our daughter?" The husband responded seriously. "Let's call her Molly, shall we? Is that okay with you?" Miranda hesitated. "Why Molly? That's not a trendy name these days. It's more Diana and Snezana." But my husband was adamant. "And I want us to have Molly. I like that name. Brings back some memories." Miranda agreed to everything, Molly so Molly, and ran at full speed to the department to find out if they had taken the baby yet. The same day our heroine brought her home, having agreed on everything. Everyone respected Miranda as an excellent specialist, well aware of her tragedy, and decided in friendship to help adopt the child. In the meantime, they allowed us to take her. At home, in warmth and comfort, Molly, of course, will be better than in the hospital. Chuck came to get his wife, and they brought the baby home. Miranda was glowing, kissing the baby on the cheeks all the time, saying, "Who's so little? Who's so sweet? Chuck, go fill the tub with warm water. The thermometer is in the tub. We'll bathe Molly." The man complied with his wife's request without much enthusiasm, and they began to undress the baby. The baby was moving her arms and legs funny and splashing her chubby lips. A small cross glittered around her neck. Chuck carefully took it in his hands, looked closely, and gasped. He almost screamed. "God, it can't be. Isn't that the same cross? How is it possible? Miranda, this little girl really is no stranger to us. She is my granddaughter." The woman looked at him strangely. "Darling, don't be crazy. What granddaughter? You don't have children. Are you delusional? Where did you get all this from?" The man was shaking like a fever, dropped to his knees, embraced his wife, and began the story. "Miranda, don't you worry. It was a long time ago, before I met you. I had a sweetheart when I was young, Molly, an orphan from an orphanage. We met by chance, at a dance. We dated for a while, love, carrots, and all that, and she suddenly got pregnant. I didn't want a child then, and in general I was not serious about it. I tried to persuade her to have an abortion, but she refused. But it turned out that Molly died in childbirth, and I was still young and stupid. And my father scolded me, saying, 'Why do you need such a burden as a child at such a young age?' This, they say, such a responsibility for life. My business was just starting to take off, to grow, you know. So I refused to have the baby. I did not take it from the maternity hospital. I made this cross, the one with the gold frame, secretly, and put it on my daughter's neck. And now that cross is on this baby. So the woman who abandoned the baby is my daughter. And this is my granddaughter. Miranda went pale and changed her face. And you talk about it so calmly. You're a bastard, traitor. How could you abandon your own daughter in cold blood, even though you are not a poor man? Why didn't you tell me about it? And how many other skeletons in your closet that I don't know about? I'm shocked. So that's why you decided to call her Molly. It brings back memories, you say. The woman got up and silently went to bathe Molly alone. And Chuck began to plead with her. Miranda, well, forgive me. I was a fool. I repent. I made a lot of mistakes, and the fact that we lost a child, I am only to blame. I behaved like an autocrat instead of taking care of you, my dear. You won't leave me now, will you? You won't leave me, will you? I'll change. You'll see. I swear I won't go on another binge. Miranda just kept silent, and then answered, Let's see. There's no time to bicker now. We have to feed Molly. Go get the formula ready. Then we'll see. In fact, we need to do a genetic test to be sure of everything. Tomorrow I'll do it. Chuck was perplexed. What's the point of this expertise? I am 200% sure that this is my own granddaughter. There can be no doubt. You said yourself that the woman who gave birth put this cross around her neck. So it makes sense. Why all this checking? I think the baby even looks a little like me, doesn't she? Miranda did not answer. She felt disgusted. How is it that I have lived with my husband for so many years, and it turns out that I do not know him at all? I'd wonder what kind of sneakiness he is still capable of. If he abandoned his own daughter, what can he say about me? The stubborn woman still took her husband's hairbrush discreetly and cut a couple of fingernails off the baby. She took it all to her own hospital laboratory for examination. She had such a temper. If she knew the truth, then all of it. Miranda took a vacation and immersed herself in the care of Molly. Chuck changed a lot, was always there to help, and really began to treat the girl in a loving and special way. He was happy to cradle her and even got up at night when the baby was crying. But the couple's relationship was still strained. Miranda could not forgive Chuck. They did everything together. They communicated, but at night, Miranda defiantly went to sleep in her room, not in their common bedroom, and there was almost nothing left of the former trust and warmth. 3 days later, the results of the examination came back, which just killed everyone, especially Chuck. It said in black and white that Molly was not related to Chuck, 0%. The man was discouraged. How could it be? It can't be. I was sure Molly was my granddaughter. What about the cross? I don't get it, do I? Miranda was also quite puzzled and said, We can only find out if we find the wretched mother who abandoned the baby, because her data is in the maternity hospital. I'll get them. And then I don't know. Hire someone. A detective. Chuck agreed. You were right. We need to find out the truth and find my daughter. Maybe at least at the end of my life, I will correct my mistakes of youth. Thank you for being there for me. Even though you're much younger, Miranda, you're wiser. The man wanted to hug his wife, but she pulled away and quickly changed the subject. Miranda, as promised, found out about the birthing mother. Her name was Clara, and there was an address too. Chuck rejoiced. That's it, they found her. I hired a great private detective. He'll find her in no time. I wonder what she's like as a daughter. Probably hates me a lot, huh? What do you think? Miranda shrugged her shoulders. We'll find it. We'll ask. But you seem to have a family tradition of abandoning your children. It doesn't add up, though. Nothing's clear yet. Reich, Granddaddy, come and help me dress Molly. Let's go for a walk. Or have you changed your mind about babysitting someone else's baby? I don't know what to expect from you. Chuck even took offense. What are you doing again? Miranda, I said I was sorry. And I realized everything. And I will not leave Molly, no matter what this examination shows, and who her mother is, and why she left her. I only now realize what happiness it is to rock this warm, squeaking lump in my arms, and I'm enjoying it to the full. And I love you, Miranda, very much. Though you have not forgiven me, I can feel it. Well, Molly, shall we go for a walk? They were walking in the park. Chuck wheeled the expensive and fancy stroller. Miranda was enjoying her walk. Their cottage neighbors could only wonder how this couple had a baby. It took the detectives a whole month to find the baby's mother, but it was not that simple. She did not live at the address given in the maternity hospital. She was herself an orphan from an orphanage, and that is where they helped to find the thread that led to the lost girl. They found her in a remote village, where she had gone for good after giving birth. As soon as Miranda and Chuck found out about it, they immediately called a nanny for Molly and went. The village was really quite abandoned, 10 houses at most. They knocked on the tiny window. Behind the curtain, they could see something stirring. A couple of minutes later, the same woman who had left Molly Miranda appeared on the doorstep, the one who remembered her well from the outside. She was a skinny, pimply girl, almost a teenager, with bright pink hair. She was certainly not a woman. When she saw Miranda, she recognized her, too, and recoiled. What do you want? Why did you come here? How did you even find me? I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Miranda responded as peacefully as possible. Clara, don't be afraid of us. We have no pretensions. Can we come in? We're talking. Please, we really need to know something. They entered a cramped, cluttered room and sat down on a squashed couch. Chuck was the first to start. Clara, we want to adopt your daughter, and we took her home with us. We named her Molly. She has a cross around her neck. Where did you get it? I know this piece of jewelry very well. I used to put it like this around my daughter's neck many years ago. Please tell me, where did you get that cross? For me, it is a matter of life and death. And Miranda added, Clara, we're not judging you by any means, and we won't leave Molly. We love her dearly. But still, tell us why you left her. There must be some serious reason. Don't you love her at all? Clara sighed and answered, I myself am an orphan, grew up in an orphanage, no relatives or acquaintances in the city. Except Kelly. She's my best friend. We grew up together in the orphanage, like sisters. We went through a lot during that time. Words can't express it. I ran away with her twice, but they were quick to bring us back and beat us badly. And then I decided to run away for the third time when I was 16, but I never went back to the orphanage. Kelly didn't want to. She stayed there. She was given a room in the dormitory after graduation. She is not at all street, homely, quiet, and modest. She went to school to be a seamstress. Then they took her to work in the atelier. She had a talent for it since childhood. She managed to create such beauty by hand from the same gray clothes. That's where she stayed. Kelly had a lot of willpower. She turned down all her suitors at once and was on her way to get out of poverty. And I was stupid and winded. I got involved with one guy and then another. I didn't get a place to live. I didn't stay in an orphanage until I came of age, so I wandered here and there, like a tumbleweed. Honestly speaking, I had everything. I learned how to smoke, drink alcohol, and jump around in other people's beds. So I got pregnant by a fly-by-night construction worker. His name was Nick. He was on a business trip. He did his job and went home, and it was up to me to sort it out. I waited till the last minute to get pregnant. So where was I supposed to take the baby? Out on the street. What could I give her? I grew up a worthless fool myself, and I have to drag her along with me. Kelly, when she found out about my pregnancy, put her cross around my neck, saying that it never made her happy. Maybe it would make me happy at least. She urged me not to give up the baby and to stay with her. She promised to help me. And I know myself, I'll start drinking again and walking around out of hopelessness. And what is there to live for? Kelly doesn't have a lot of money herself, and I'm about to have a baby on my head. She already has a tiny room. There's no way the three of us can work it out. I'll only ruin her life. I'm just a bad girl, that's all. And no one needs me. In fact, I gave up, and I went wherever I wanted to go. Now I'm living in an abandoned house. My neighbors bring me things from the garden, vegetables, bread. I don't know what to do next, but I don't want to go back to my old life. It pulls me in like a whirlpool. I feel I'll never get out of it. I'll perish. Chuck and Miranda were silent, stunned by what they heard. Then Miranda asked quietly, "Clara, you know what? Why don't we go to our place? We have a huge cottage. We'll give you a separate room. Maybe when you see Molly, you'll want to raise her. Think it over, and we'll go outside and talk." They went outside, and Miranda looked at Chuck with tear-filled eyes. "I suggested it for nothing, didn't I? You won't mind, will you? You'll say again that I'm dragging poverty into the house, and you'll be embarrassed in front of your business partners. I know you. I just felt sorry for this poor girl with such a crippled fate. She's like a hunted animal. She has nowhere to go. After all, it will roll down and disappear, as you might say. In fact, she has no one to help her. How terrible it is." Chuck put his arm around his wife, and for the first time since their quarrel, she did not push him away, and said quietly, "You know, I don't mind. Let's try it, if she wants it, of course. After all, a mother is a mother. Maybe she'll come to her senses. She doesn't look like a hardened bitch. She's just confused. I'm not a bad judge of character." They walked back in, and once again asked the grief-stricken mother, "Well, Clara, are you coming with us or not? It's up to you. We won't force you. If you like to wander and vagabond, stay. But if you want to start a normal life, let's go. We'll give you that chance. Only in an honest way, without any mischief or stealing, and you tell us where to find Kelly." Clara replied cheerfully, "I agree. The only thing I don't understand is, for the life of me, why do you need all this? You're messing with me. What's in it for you? I've never met anyone in my life who does things for no reason. It's all suspicious." Chuck responded, "It's simple, Clara, correcting the sins of youth. I once, like you now, thoughtlessly abandoned my daughter, Kelly, in the maternity ward. And only now do I realize what I've done. Will she forgive me? Will she want to see me? I don't know. But I want to at least try to make things work. That's why I don't blame you. I was a fool myself, but I want to sincerely save you from the mistakes I made myself. That's it." Miranda smiled and turned to the woman. "Well, then pack your bags if you agree." Clara picked up a dusty backpack in the corner. "That's all my stuff. I'm ready." Miranda felt cold inside and squeezed with pity for this poor guy. My God, and I complain about something else. A person has her whole life in one little rucksack. How terrible it is to have no roof over your head and nothing of your own. Chuck and Miranda brought Clara to their home, let the nanny go, and put the young mother in a comfortable room on the second floor with a balcony. Miranda prudently prepared her clean underwear and clothes and showed her where the shower room was. Clara ran happily there. It was obvious that she had not seen normal and comfortable conditions for a long time. In the meantime, the hostess had laid the table and invited everyone to the table. Clara was unrecognizable after the shower. She looked fresh and flushed, and finally smiled for the first time. Miranda deliberately did not mention Molly first, waiting for Mommy to want to look at her daughter herself. Clara greedily pounced on the delicious and fresh food, and ate with great appetite. Suddenly, she heard crying from the nursery. Miranda immediately jumped up and went there without saying anything to Clara. She was gone for quite some time. Chuck also ate in silence and watched the young woman carefully, watching her reaction. She dropped her dinner and quietly went into the nursery too. Miranda was just changing the baby and changing her diaper. She addressed Molly affectionately. "Who's the wet one? Who's hungry here? Mommy's going to feed you, my little sweetie." The little girl smiled with her toothless mouth and wrinkled her nose funny. Clara approached quietly and asked timidly, "Can I feed her myself? Will you show me how? I don't know how. Miranda helped Clara sit down comfortably, held Molly in her arms, and showed her how to properly feed her from the bottle. Clara at first was a little nervous and afraid of the baby. She did everything awkwardly, but then began to smile and hum at her too. Miranda smiled, quietly stepped out, and went into the kitchen. Chuck waited tensely. What was next? Miranda came up behind him, hugged him, and said quietly, "Well, my love, we're without a child again. It's not our destiny to become parents. Clara's maternal instinct has been awakened, I can tell. I was afraid nothing would come of it. Let's go tomorrow to your daughter, Alina. You'll beg her forgiveness." Chuck asked worriedly, "Let's see how Molly is doing, shall we? I'm a little afraid, aren't I? Can Clara do it? She's still young, not even 20. The two of them looked quietly into the nursery. They almost burst into tears. Clara was curled up on the sofa, cradling the baby in her arms, both sniffling sweetly, Molly even smiling in her sleep. The woman even felt a pang of jealousy. It was she, Miranda, who had grown attached to the little girl and wanted to adopt her. And now what? But she immediately pulled herself back. "Do not you dare." Clara's mother. "And no one will be closer than a mother to the child. Pull yourself together. Don't be a wuss." The next day, Miranda and Chuck went to the dormitory to see Aliona. It was Saturday, and they hoped the girl was home. The couple rang the bell. A young, pretty, slender girl opened the door. She looked quite decent, not unlike Clara, and dressed well, too. Kelly was surprised. "Good afternoon. Who are you here to see? We don't know each other. You must be at the wrong door." Chuck asked in a faltering voice. "Hello, Kelly. I'm your daddy, Chuck. And this is my wife, Miranda. May we come in?" The girl changed her face, and her tone changed to icy. "No, you can't." "Why? Why did you come here?" "To remember that you have a daughter. Have you had amnesia for 18 years in a row? I'm doing fine without you, as you can see. I made it. I didn't go down. I made it. Go away. And don't you ever come into my life again, Daddy. It's too late for my conscience. I don't even like talking to you." And Kelly slammed the door in my face with a bang. The plaster on the wall fell off. Chuck was shaking. He was physically ill. Only now did he fully realize what he had done. He had given his daughter into an orphanage with his own hands. His own little girl. Immediately, Clara's unhappy face appeared to him, and he imagined that it could have happened to Kelly too. He mumbled aloud, "She'll never forgive me. What a bastard I am. I didn't even think for a second that I was committing a heinous crime. I was living a peaceful life, eating, drinking, and walking, while my child was suffering in an orphanage. Starving, running away, loitering. Is it her fault that her mother died and her father turned out to be a bastard? What's to be done? God, how ashamed I am." Miranda sighed and answered, "What did you want? You want her to throw herself on your neck after such a hard life, screaming, 'Hooray! Daddy's here.' That's a perfectly normal reaction. She had a very difficult childhood. We should wait until Kelly calms down a little and then try talking to her again. We can help her in some way, do something for her. Make her realize that her father is not just an empty word, but a meaningful person in her life. So tune in, honey, for a long fight for your daughter's heart. She's a tough nut to crack." When they got home, Clara was just walking with Molly. The girl looked so happy. She was wheeling the stroller proudly, and she looked nothing like the hunted woman they had seen in the village house. A young mother smiling came up to them and asked in surprise, "Where's Kelly? Or wasn't she home? I thought you were coming with her. I missed my friend so much." Miranda sighed. "We thought so too. But Kelly wasn't ready to forgive her father yet, and she refused to even talk to us." Chuck noted dejectedly, "She'll never forgive me. I know it. You can feel right away. She has my character." Clara laughed. "That's a good point. Kelly is a flint. That's why she was able to stay alive. But she really is very good. She just needs time. She's always like that. She gets mad at first, but then she gets over it. Thank you for everything. What a fool I was to leave Molly. Now I'm hugging her and I realize, there he is, the light in the window and the meaning of life. And I almost lost it. You're not gonna take my daughter away from me, are you? Will you help me get her back? I foolishly gave up my baby, and now he's nobody. Miranda hastened to reassure Clara. Don't worry, you can still legally revoke the refusal and get your baby back within 6 months. That's why we took her away, so we wouldn't have to give her to a nursery who would love her there. Clara threw herself on Miranda's neck in tears. Thank you. You are holy people. I've never met anyone like you. Don't think I'm going to sit on your shoulders all my life. As soon as Molly goes to kindergarten, I'll get a job and rent a room. Chuck interjected himself into the conversation. Live as long as you need to. No one is persecuting you. On the contrary, Miranda is your midwife. She will tell you a lot of things, and she will babysit you when you need it. There is enough space, and I have grown attached and loved Molly as if she were my own. Clara decided by all means to reconcile Kelly and her father. She wanted to do something to thank Miranda and Chuck. So she called Aliona a week later and made an appointment to meet her in the same park where she always walked with Lyubachka in the afternoon. The friend was very happy and agreed to meet her. Kelly was walking through the park, turning her head, looking for Clara, the outlaw with the pink hair and the defiant haircut. But a well-dressed, clean-looking mother with an expensive stroller appeared in front of her and waved at her. Kelly was simply dumbfounded. Clara, what a change. I never would have recognized you. Where's that sassy teenage hippie I've known since I was a kid? Oh my God. How clever of you not to give up the baby. So did you marry well, or did the baby's father come to his senses? Come on, don't keep me in suspense. Tell me, how will you look with that calm, wheaten hair color and the new hairstyle? Clara sat down on the bench and began the story, rocking the napping Molly. Oh, Kelly, so much has happened. You can't imagine. I did leave my daughter, idiot, because there was nowhere to take her, and I was angry at the world. Although I was very persuaded by a midwife to change my mind. But did I listen to anyone? I ran away from the maternity hospital and jumped on the first train that came along and ended up in a remote village. I opened an empty house and started living there. I was so nauseated. I wanted to drink again and forget myself, but I decided that was enough. I was so sick of all this mess with the changing suitors. I think I'd rather die in the middle of nowhere than go back to my old ways. And then the wizards came to me. The same midwife from the maternity hospital and her husband, they took my Molly from the hospital and wanted to adopt her. And she was wearing a cross, you know, the one you gave me. This man began to beg me to tell him where I got it. He said he was a fool when he was young. He abandoned his own child in a maternity hospital, just like me now. And now he's looking for her, you that is. And his wife, Miranda, offered to go to live with them and to get used to his daughter. And you know, I thought, I do not love my daughter. I got pregnant, and in general, but when I took Molly in his arms, just turned over everything inside. And the tears gushed. I think, what kind of a fool I am, a cuckoo, not a mother. I suffered at the orphanage myself and condemned my child to such a life. Now I live at home. I have my own room with a balcony. Miranda is very nice. She really helps me with the baby. I do not really know how to do anything. Who taught us what at the orphanage? Kelly replied, Good for you, my friend, sincerely, that you have come to your senses, that you have taken the path of correction. These two also came to me yesterday. I kicked the wretched father out. I don't want to know. What a benefactor. He's come to his senses. Where was he before? When I was starving, vagabonding. What did it take for me to find a job, to get a job? I hate him. Clara sighed. You shouldn't do that, Kelly. Chuck's not a bad man. Believe me. He admits he's made a lot of mistakes. He doesn't deny his guilt. Well, who is without sin? I almost did something stupid and irreparable. And if it were not for these people, my daughter would have hated me just as much. And the fact that they took me in, a complete stranger to them, warmed up, took my child from the maternity hospital, says a lot. We are not children anymore, and all these wrongs should be left there. Nothing can be returned. You try to communicate with your father. You know I treat you like a sister, and I wouldn't wish anything bad on you. If people were bad, I would never go to them, even if I were dying. Then Molly started grunting and twisting in the stroller and whimpering. Clara immediately rushed over, took her in her arms, and began to touch her nose and cheeks. Concernedly, she said, "Oh, Kelly, I have to go. Because my daughter is a little cold. God forbid she gets sick. I'm sorry. I'd love to talk to you more, but I can't. We're on a schedule now." The girl waved to her friend. They hugged, said goodbye, and went home. Kelly thought long and hard about her friend's words, a volcano raging inside her. On the one hand, she was still resentful that her childhood had passed so joylessly, but on the other hand, she wished she had at least someone close to her now, with whom she could share, talk, and tell what was on her mind. Maybe Clara was right to get over her pride and make up. Chuck stopped by his daughter's house every day after work and stood by the window for a long time, hoping she would notice him and invite him in. He didn't know with what eyes to go to her again. What to say? After all, it is clear, no matter how to spin it, that he is a scoundrel, and she was all right. The girl, of course, saw it all, watched from behind the curtain, but still hesitated to forgive her father or not. That night, Kelly couldn't stand it. Her heart wavered, waved to him from the window, smiled, and gestured for him to come in. Chuck was so happy he rushed to the apartment. Kelly opened the door and said, quite peacefully, in a mature way, "Hello, Father, come in. Shall we try again?" Chuck couldn't stand it and almost cried, his voice trailing off. He whispered, "Thank you, daughter, for inviting me. And I'm sorry for everything. I know I was late in realizing everything, and I missed so many years." Kelly sighed and answered, "That's better late than never." They chatted for a long time. Chuck ventured out and asked, "Daughter, tell me the truth. Why did you give that cross to Clara? It's important for me to know." The girl did not lie. It was not in her character, and answered honestly, "I was told by the nurses at the orphanage that my father put a cross around my neck, and then he wrote a waiver. If you only knew how much I hated you. And that cross was like a stone around my neck. So I gave it to Clara, thinking that at least it would bring her happiness, since it could not for me. It is very difficult for me to understand your terrible deed and accept everything as it is. I do not hide it. But I promise to try, honestly." Not at all at once the ice melted between them, and the relationship really became like that of a father with his beloved daughter. Chuck had to drown him a little bit, a millimeter at a time, and regain the trust and love lost over the years. Miranda brought them closer together as best she could, invited Kelly to visit, gave her treats, and Clara was right there with Molly. Gradually, Kelly began to catch herself thinking how good she felt in this big and friendly family. She was no longer an outcast and a loner. Now she felt loved, welcomed, and always looked forward to. The girl stayed at her father's house more and more often. She adored playing with Molly and talking heart to heart with Miranda. She didn't want to run back to her empty, modest room after work and spend the evening alone. Miranda and Chuck's relationship got better too. The woman was very happy that Molly had brought everyone together and changed her husband beyond recognition. Now he was a model family man, the head of the family, no longer a despot and a bore, a completely different man in front of her, sensitive, loving, and wise. Even at the beginning of her marriage, she had not received as much tenderness and affection as she did now. Kelly even introduced her boyfriend's family. Andrew, she proudly pronounced. "Meet my dad." She was flattered to hear from her fiancé how big and wonderful their family is. Chuck helped get her daughter into university as a designer because she could come up with a pattern that a famous couturier would have envied. A year went by. Everyone lived peacefully, quietly, and amicably. And Molly was already running around the house, staggering around, flopping funny on her butt wherever she could. This cheerful, chubby princess was everyone's favorite. Chuck always brought a little treat from work, and Molly ran to greet him with open arms. She still called his name, Grandpa, and he didn't correct her. Let it be. The child knew best. He gladly rolled her on his neck, twirled her around, and pretended to be a horse. The baby laughed and squealed with joy. Miranda was still working as a midwife. She could not think of herself in any other profession. For the past 3 months, she had been unbearably nauseous, weak, and not hungry at all. She had lost a considerable amount of weight and had begun to go to bed early in the evening, citing malaise. Chuck was the first to sound the alarm. "Miranda, I don't like you. What's the matter with you? Does it hurt somewhere? You've lost your face. Let's you and I go to a private clinic, to one of my regular customers, a professor. There's never a coup. They'll take us right away. You'll have tests, and the doctor will take a look at you. I'm very worried about you." The woman was touched by her husband's concern. Before, he would never have paid any attention to her well-being, and he would have chastised her for sleeping all the time. She herself, to be honest, began to worry and suspected the worst. Especially as her health was worsening day by day. Miranda could faint anywhere, and it was very frightening, suggesting frightening thoughts. Miranda went through all the tests, and the doctor took her to the ultrasound. Chuck followed close behind, listening to every word the doctor said. The professor took a long look at the screen, frowned, and then uttered, "Well, my dears, congratulations. That little speck in the corner, your future baby. I do not really like the location of the fetus. There may be a detachment of the placenta, and your age is, frankly, critical for childbirth. But if you want, I will refer you to the best specialist gynecologist. He will manage your pregnancy from beginning to end, and will make every effort to save the baby." Miranda cried with happiness, and Chuck could not believe his ears. "Tow it again. Miranda is pregnant. I didn't even hope for such a miracle anymore. That's the news. That's it, honey. No more work in the department or at home. Just rest and take care of my baby. I'd rather hire a housekeeper and a cook than jeopardize the life of our baby." Miranda smiled and replied, "Chuck, I feel like it's going to be okay this time. I love you so much." When they arrived home, a concerned Clara and Kelly were already waiting for them, both looking inquisitively and waiting to see what the test showed and what was wrong with Miranda after all. The woman was insanely pleased that everyone was so worried about her. She smiled and joyfully reported, "It's okay, my lovelies. Soon you and I will have another member of the family, I hope. I'm pregnant. My father and I didn't think it was possible after the tragedy. That's why we are in shock ourselves." Suddenly, Kelly blushed and added, "Not one, but 2 family members coming soon. I am also pregnant, but I was afraid to tell him. I thought my dad would be upset because I had just started studying, and he was trying so hard to get me settled in. And here you are. We really didn't do it on purpose. I don't know how it happened." Chuck opened his mouth and grabbed for air, unable to say anything. What a day. "You know, daughter, just a few years ago, your father was an autocrat and a despot." Yes, I admit it, and I certainly wouldn't have been happy to hear the news. And now I'm happy. I'm doubly happy. I'm going to be a father and a grandfather at the same time. It's all right, daughter. You'll take a sabbatical, and then you'll finish your studies. It's all fixable. All I ask is that you sign Andrew's name. It's not good for a child to grow up without a father. He doesn't mind, does he? Or I'll talk to him in a jiffy." Kelly waved her hands. "Don't. He's happy too. Andrew is very nice and loves me. He's working as a security guard. He combines it with his studies to raise money for the baby. To be honest, we have already applied to the registry office. The wedding is in a week. Chuck was discouraged. Wow, my father doesn't even know that his own daughter is getting married soon. You have to get ready, invite guests, book a restaurant. Why didn't you tell me this before? Well, I'm going to call and make all the arrangements. Kelly was embarrassed. Oh, Daddy, don't. I'm really sorry. We thought we'd sign quietly, and that's it. We don't have much money. Andrew's family is very intelligent, but not rich, so I do not want to embarrass them. Chuck jumped up and down. Don't think about it at all. It's up to you and Miranda to choose a beautiful wedding dress from the catalog and the groom's suit. I'll take care of the rest. It's the least I can do for you, my dear, and I'm so sorry. Oh, we should invite the groom's parents to visit, to get acquainted, so to speak, with future relatives. And the man started calling his acquaintances and arranging everything to make the celebration on time. Then Clara entered their family conversation and said quietly, "What am I supposed to do? I'm just going to get in the way here with Molly, aren't I? There's Kelly's wedding coming up, and then the baby's coming, and we'll have a lot of expenses of our own. We should go, right?" Miranda ran up to her and gave her a motherly hug, whispering, "Inashka, you are no stranger to us for a long time, and Molly is the light in the window. If I hadn't brought her home, then I would have never had such a big and friendly family. I don't want to hear that again. You're part of the family, too. Period. I'll never forgive myself if you and Molly leave, and I'll worry a lot about you, and I can't. And neither can your friend, by the way." Kelly hugged her friend, too. "What are you saying, Clara? We're like sisters. You're the closest thing I have to a human being. I will give birth to a friend for Molly, so it won't be boring." Clara sobbed in an overload of emotion and said in a trembling voice, "Thank you all so much. I love you all too. I do not know how to thank heaven that you knocked on my window in that village. You educated me. You sheltered me. Where would I be now if it were not for you? I can't even imagine. And now we have a family, Lubachka and I, and we are really very happy here. I will help you in cooking and cleaning. You need to have a lot of rest now. And I have all the energy in the world. All right. I haven't learned how to stuff pike like you, but I can make soup and cutlets." Everyone laughed together and went out on the porch for tea and apple pie, which Clara and Kelly had baked together for Miranda and Chuck's arrival. Everyone was chatting, making plans together, wondering where best to make another nursery, how to organize Kelly's wedding. Chuck found himself thinking that his past binge life wasn't worth a dime. There it was, true happiness, the warmth of a family home, and children's laughter. Kelly's wedding went beautifully. She looked at herself in the mirror, and she was melting. Only in a fairy tale dream could she imagine such an insanely expensive and beautiful snow-white dress and a long flying veil. The father was proudly leading his daughter to the wedding. Everything inside him was singing. The family quickly became friends with the groom's parents. They really turned out to be quiet, intelligent people, both of whom were teachers. Miranda sat at the festive table, drank orange juice, watched the beautiful celebration, and was absolutely happy. How young and in love they are, just like me and Chuck used to be. God grant them happiness. Now she was sure her husband would never go back to his old life and would be the best father to her baby and grandfather. That's how it is.